the great Buddhist commentator, the Venerable Budhaghosa, said that there were two kinds of Buddhojana. And Buddhojana means literally say, many people or many folk. So it means majority of people. Technically it means those who are not enlightened. So unenlightened persons are called Buddhojana. And he said there are two kinds of them. One is called Kalyana Buddhojana, and the other is called Andha Buddhojana. Kalyana Buddhojana means a good Buddhojana, and Andha Buddhojana means a blind Buddhojana. A good Buddhojana really means a Buddhojana, a person who is well informed, who knows some of the teachings of the Buddha. And a blind Buddhojana means a person who does not know any of the teachings of the Buddha. And I would prefer to use, say, uninformed Buddhist and informed or well-informed Buddhist rather than saying worldling or unenlightened person. And it has been my desire to make you well-informed Buddhist. And you have been with me practicing and listening to my talks for about 2 years, and also you have been with Venerable Kepapanyo, and so I think you are already well-informed Buddhist. I want to make you better well-informed Buddhist, to reach the standard of well-informed Buddhist set by that great commentator. According to him, a person who is familiar with the teachings of the 5 aggregates, 12 sense bases, 18 elements, the 4 noble truths, dependent origination, and foundations of mindfulness, and so on. So persons who are familiar with these teachings are called well-informed persons. In the commentary, he mentioned 5 aggregates, 12 sense bases, 18 elements, 4 noble truths, dependent origination, and Satipatthana by name, and then he implied the other, supreme efforts and so on, by the words and so on. So altogether there are the other things as well as the 37 members of enlightenment. They are foundations of mindfulness, supreme efforts, means of accomplishment, faculties, powers, factors of enlightenment, and factors of path. So this will be like a table of contents, and we will go through this table of contents one by one in a little detail. Now these things are taught in discourses, suttas, as well as in Abhidhamma. But in the suttas, they are treated just briefly. And in Abhidhamma, they are treated in too much detail. So I don't know whether you want the Sutta method or Abhidhamma method. Which do you want?
Abhidhamma.
That's too much.
How about the middle?
Right. So we will follow the middle path here. Neither too brief as in Suttas, nor in too much detail as in Abhidhamma. So we will take the middle path here also. Now, do you see any name of suttas in this list? Just like the first sermon, or the another sermon, or fire sermon, or whatever. Do you see any names of the suttas here in this list? No. Now, Why? Because these are the basics. If you understand this, then you can understand any sutta. That is why the individual suttas are not mentioned in this list. But these are the basics, and so if you understand this, you can easily understand and you can correctly understand the discourses in the Sutta Pitaka. So what is the first group? 5 aggregates, Pancha Khandas. I want you to be familiar with Pali words too, so I give Pali too. So Pancha means 5, Khanda means aggregates, so 5 aggregates. I think you are all familiar with the teaching of 5 aggregates. You have heard 5 aggregates maybe hundreds of times. And what are these 5 aggregates? 1, what? Aggregate of matter. 2, aggregate of feeling. 3, aggregate of perception. 4, aggregate of mental formations. 5, aggregate of consciousness. So these are the 5 aggregates. Now when the Buddha analyzed the world, both living beings and outside worlds, Buddha found only these 5 aggregates. So everything can be broken down into these 5 aggregates. A being is a combination of 5 aggregates, and outside things belong to the first one, the aggregate of matter. So everything in the world is composed of one or the all of these aggregates. Now, why are they called aggregates? I think I have told you about this. Do you remember? Why are they called aggregates? Maybe you may think because they are group, right? So they are called aggregates. Now, even one among these is called an aggregate. Now there are 28 material properties, right? Where we are going to study these 28 today. Now the first one, even the first one alone is called an aggregate. So there must be some meaning behind this, why they are called aggregate. Not because they are 2, 3 combined together. If they are called aggregate because they are combined 2, 3 and so on together, then each of them cannot be called an aggregate. But here, aggregate, they are called aggregate because each one can belong to past, present, future, internal, external, subtle, gross, low, high, far and near. So they can be divided in these aspects. That is why even one unit, one say material property is called a group or an aggregate. Do you find Nibbana in these 5 aggregates? You don't find Nibbana here, right? Nibbana is excluded because Nibbana is not an aggregate. Nibbana cannot be divided into past Nibbana, present Nibbana, future Nibbana, internal Nibbana, external Nibbana, and so on. Nibbana is timeless. Nibbana cannot be called present or future or past. And Nibbana cannot be say it is external or internal, not both. It is only external and so on. So Nibbana cannot be divided into the past, present, future, internal, external, and so on. That is why Nibbana is not called an aggregate. Therefore, in the teachings of 5 aggregates, Nibbana is excluded. Now, let us see the first of these aggregates, the aggregate of matter. Now, what is the Pali name of the first aggregate? Rupa Khanda. Yes. Now, the word Rupa is defined as that which changes with cold, heat, hunger, thirst, bites of insects, etc. So the brief meaning is that which changes is called Rupa. And change here means the apparent change which can be seen by our native eyes, naked eyes, because mind also changes, right? Mind changes more quickly than material properties. But mind is not called Rupa, because here change means visible change, so which is visible to naked eyes. That is why material properties only are called Rupa, and not the consciousness and mental states. So this Rupa Khanda, or the aggregate of matter, consists of 28 material properties. So please look at the other sheet. So Rupa Khanda, or aggregate of matter, consists of material properties, 28 material properties. And briefly they are divided into two groups. The first group is the primary element, and the second group is dependent ones. So there are 4 primary elements and 24 dependent ones, and so we get 28 material properties. These 28 material properties are called Rupa Khanda, aggregate of matter. Now the first 4 primary elements, in Pali they are called the great elements, but the primary element is, I think, much better. Now there are 4 primary elements. What is the first one? The element of earth. Second, element of water. Third, element of fire. Fourth, element of air. So these are the 4 primary elements. That means they are the basic elements of anything which we call matter, which we call material property. So these 4 primary elements can be found everywhere there is matter. Now the first is the earth, element of earth. Element of earth means not necessarily the physical earth. What is meant here is the quality which inheres in the earth, a kind of quality which we find in the earth. So when you look at the earth, or when you feel the earth, what do you find? Hardness. So element of earth means the hardness. And hardness and softness are just relative terms. Say, compared to steel, lead is soft. But compared to, say, cloth, lead is hard. So hardness and softness are relative terms. And so when we say hardness, we also mean softness. So hardness or softness is what we call the element of earth. Not necessarily the earth or the clay that we pick up from the ground. That is why this earth element is found everywhere. We find the earth element in water, in fire, in air. Because that is, if you feel the water, then you feel softness there, right? So that softness or hardness we feel is what is called earth element. That is why earth element is everywhere. Now the second element, element of water. What is element of water? What do you see in water? We just see water, right? Stickiness or cohesiveness. So cohesiveness is what we call water, which keeps things together. That is the quality which keeps things together. Say, suppose there is flour. So you put some water on the flour and you knead it, and then you get a ball of or something like a dough, right? So formally the particles of flour are not attached to, say, one another, but you put water and then they become attached. So that quality of keeping things together is what is called element of water. Not necessarily the water we drink, although there is what we call water element is predominant in water. So this trickling or this cohesiveness is what we call water element. That is why even in a grain of sand there is element of water. because a grain of sand is made up of smaller particles, and these smaller particles are cut together by water element in them. Although we cannot squeeze water out of a grain of sand, but there is this element of water in it, so that its particles stick together. Now the third one, the element of fire. So what is the element of fire? Temperature, heat or cold. When we say heat, we also mean cold. So heat or cold is what we call the element of fire, not necessarily the real fire, although the element of heat is predominant in fire. And then the last is the element of air. Now, element of air. Air has the characteristic of extending. You blow air into a balloon, and then the balloon extends, and it keeps the balloon extended that way when you close the hole. So the air has the characteristic of extending, and that is also called supporting. So the element of air means the extending nature of the air. And it is said that because there is this extending nature of air, that things can stay upright. We can walk upright. If there is no air at all, then we might fall. So the air element is that which supports us and which keeps things extended. So what is earth element? Hardness or softness. Water element? Cohesiveness. Fire element? Temperature, heat or cold. And air element? Extending, supporting, extending, supporting. So in this glass of water, we find all four elements, because when you touch the water, then you have the sensation of the hardness or softness there, and then cohesiveness is there. It's very, very easy to see, and temperature also is there, right? If you put it the thermometer, and then you can read, say, 80 degrees or 70 degrees or something like that. And the air element, there is air element, so that it stays together. It is what you call it extended. So everywhere we find these four elements, in our bodies, or in trees or flowers, or in water, or anywhere. These four elements are to be found, and so they are called the primary elements, or the basic elements. And on these basic elements depend the other 24. That means the other 24 depend on these four to exist or to arise. If there are no these four elements, then the 24 cannot arise. I think the four great elements can be compared to a canvas, and then the dependent ones are compared to picture. So if you draw picture on the canvas, if there is no canvas, there can be no picture at all. But the picture is not the product of the canvas. The picture only depends upon the canvas. In the same way here, the 24 depend upon the primary 4, and these 24 are not the product of the primary 4. That is important, because in many English translations they use the word derived matter. I don't like that, because if it is derived, then it must come from these 4, or it must be changed from these 4. But actually these 24 are separate material properties. They are not derived from the 4, but they depend on the 4 to arise and to exist, just like the picture depends upon the canvas. Or in other words, we depend upon the house, say, to live. We must have a house to live, to stay, and we are not the product of the house, although we depend upon the house. So in the same way, these 24 elements, 24 material properties, depend on the 4 primary elements, or 4 great elements, for their existence. And 24 dependent ones can be treated in in groups. The first group, second group, and so on. Now, what are in the first group? Eye sensitivity, ear sensitivity, nose, tongue, and body sensitivity. Now, these are what we call the five senses. Now, eye sensitivity means a place in the eye where the image strikes, and then in medical terms it sends a message to the brain. So the place where the image strikes is what is called eye sensitivity here. So eye sensitivity does not mean the whole of the eyeball, but maybe according to the medical science, it is on the retina, a place on the retina where the image strikes. So that place is called eye sensitivity because it is sensitive to the visible object, and it is where the visible object strikes and then causes us to see. So that is eye sensitivity. So eye sensitivity is a place in the eye where it is sensitive to a visible object. Then the second one, ear sensitivity, means something in the ear. What do you call that? Inner ear. Some place in the ear where the vibrations of sound strike. And then nose. Nose sensitivity means something in the nose, by which we sense smell. Not the whole physical nose, but something in the nose. And then tongue sensitivity, that I think you know, the taste buds, somewhere on the tongue. And body sensitivity is on the whole of our body, except at the end of hairs, and then nails. So except those places, body sensitivity is everywhere in the body. So these are called the five senses. So the first group consists of the five senses: eye sensitivity, ear, nose, tongue, and body sensitivity. They are the receptors of outside stimuli. So the outside stimuli are the second group. Form, that means color, that means what can be seen, a visible object. Sound, odor, that means smell, taste, and tangibility or touch. So visible object, sound, smell, taste, touch, they correspond to the above five. So form or color corresponds to eye sensitivity, sound to ear sensitivity, and so on. And they are called five objects, five kinds of objects. There are altogether 6 kinds of objects, and they are the first 5 of the 6 kinds of objects. Now, form is not a good translation for that word, but many authors use this word to translate the Pali word Rupa. So actually it is not form. When we say form, it means something like a shape. And what we really see is not the form or shape, but the visible datum. So some authors translate it as visible datum. Then if it is visible datum, then we have to say audible datum, an article odorous datum, tactile datum, or something like that. So that's difficult. So by the word form, please understand that it simply means the visible datum or visible object, what can be seen, not really, not exactly the form or shape. Because according to Abhidhamma, we do not see form or we do not see shape with our eyes. We see form or shape, or we think we see, or we conjure up this form or shape in our mind, not with our eyes. So we do not see actually the form or shape. What we see is just the visible data. And then we, after seeing with our eyes, we translate it in our minds, these into shape or form. And then we think, oh, I see a shape. So when you look at it, you see it's this is shape or form, right? A shape or form of a stick. But actually what we see is just the visible data in this thing. And after seeing the visible individual visible datum, we make up in our minds that, oh, I see a pen, I see a thing which is the shape of a stick or shape of a rod. So by form we mean what can be seen, and that is interpreted to be color. So we can see color or visible datum. Sound, odor, taste. Now tangibility, there is no number for this, only the asterisk. Why? If we put a number there, we will get 29 and not 28. Now tangibility means what can be touched. And what can be touched is no different from the first, third and fourth of the primary elements. So what we call touch is not a separate thing from these elements. When we say touch, we just mean these three primary elements together, number 1, number 3 and number 4. So that is why a number is not given to tangibility here. Although there are 5 objects, the form, sound, odor, taste and touch, touch does not get a separate number for itself, because when we say touch, we simply mean the 3 primary elements, the first, the third and the fourth. Now you may want to ask, why are only 3 elements said to be tangibility and not water element, or why water element is excluded? Now according to Abhidhamma, water element cannot be touched. It is untouchable. Do you agree with that? You cannot touch a water element. Now you touch the water, and when you touch the water, you touch the earth element, right? There is softness or hardness, and then you feel cold or you feel hot. So there is fire element, and then the extendedness there in the water, and that is air element. And so it is said that the cohesiveness or the water element cannot be touched. That is why it is excluded from tangibility or that which can be touched. And it is explained in the commentaries with seeing, with thinking we see the shape. So when we touch water, we think that we touch the water element. We can touch the water element, but what we really touch is the other 3 elements. So in the same way, when you see something like this, and you think you see a pencil, you see a pen, shaped like a rod. But as I said before, what you see is just the individual visible datum in this thing. And you see these individual datum one by one with the eye. And then after seeing with the eye, you conjure up it in your mind as in the shape of a pen. And then your mind tells you that you see a pen, you see a thing which is the shape of a rod. But actually, what you see with the eye is just the visible datum. So in the same way, when we touch water, we think we touch the water element, but actually what we touch is not the water element but the other 3 elements. So in Abhidhamma, especially in Theravada Abhidhamma, water element is an element which cannot be touched, which does not lend itself to be touched. Now what are the next 2? Femininity and masculinity. Gender, yes. And femininity means something by which we know it is a female. And masculinity means something by which we know it is a male. Now, by sight, we know that a person is a male or a female. Sometimes, even if we do not see them clearly, by the way they walk, by the way they do things, by the way they speak, we know that it is a man, it is a woman. So that peculiarity in them is what we call femininity and masculinity. Sometimes, even looking at a hand, just a hand, you know that this is a man or this is a woman. So that is why that is because there is femininity or masculinity in that hand. That is why you know, this is a man, this is a woman. So where does this femininity and masculinity exist? Everywhere in the body. That is why even looking at your finger, you know, this is a man, this is a woman. So femininity is that by which we know that someone is a female, and masculinity is something by which we know. And the next one is heart base. There is a heart, right, in our body, and there is blood in the heart. And actually, that blood in the heart is what is called heart base. And this is supposed to be the seat of some types of consciousness. Now, there are different types of consciousness, and you will learn the different types of consciousness when we come to the fifth aggregate. Now, seeing consciousness, for example. Seeing consciousness has a seat, has the eye as a seat. That means, depending on the eye sensitivity, seeing consciousness arises. If we do not have eye sensitivity, then there will be no seeing consciousness in us. So, the eye sensitivity is said to be the seat for eye consciousness. Hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, tasting consciousness, touching consciousness have their respective seats. Then there are other types of consciousness. You think of something, and your thoughts, your emotions, and so on. What is the seat for them? So, according to the interpretation of the commentators, the heart is the seat for those kinds of consciousness. I think I've told you about heart base before, because even in Abhidhamma, Buddha did not say specifically the word heart. Buddha just said that depending on a certain material property, some types of consciousness arise, something like that. So Buddha did not say that depending upon the heart, some types of consciousness arise. But he said depending upon a certain material property. And that is interpreted to mean the heart by the commentators. And why did they interpret that to be the heart? Because in the suttas, sometimes Buddha used the word heart as a synonym for consciousness. As in English, sometimes you say heart while you mean mind or sometimes emotion. So in the same way, sometimes Buddha used the word heart to mean mind or consciousness. So I think that is why the commentators interpreted that word to mean the heart. So let us take that the heart is the base for those types of consciousness, and the heart, by heart is meant not the physical heart, but blood flowing blood that is resident in the heart, that is called heart base. And it is said that those types of consciousness depend on that heart, or that blood about the size of handful, the handful of blood in the heart. So that is called heart base. The next is life faculty. That means something which keeps things alive. Especially this life faculty is found in living beings only. Now, because of this life faculty, we do not decompose when we are alive. So when we are alive, this life faculty is always in our body. So when we die, this life faculty disappears. So it leaves the body. So after it leaves the body becomes decomposed. So life faculty is that material property which keeps other material properties living, and that is called life faculty in Jivitendriya in Pali, and Jivitendriya is translated as life faculty. But we can just say life. This is material life. There is another life faculty, and that is mental, or the mental state among the 52 mental factors. And according to the teachings of Abhidhamma, this life faculty is found in living beings only. So according to Abhidhamma, there is no life faculty in trees, plants and others. Although according to modern science, there is some kind of life in them. But that life is different from what we call jivita, or life in Abhidhamma. So they are maybe two different things. Now the next one is nutrition. It's not difficult to understand. So a quality which we find in food, especially in food, but in everything there is this nutrition. So something which nourishes the material, other material properties is called nutrition. In Pali it is called ahara. Actually it could be translated as food, but not the whole food is called ahara here. So the quality that inheres in food, that is nutrition. So nutrition is called ahara, and it is one of the material properties. Now, these 18 material properties are said to be the real material properties. Now, the others following them are not actually real or substantial material properties, but they are some aspects or some conditions of the ones mentioned above. So these 18, up to number 1 to number 18, are called Rupa. That means the real Rupa. When we want to say something real, then we repeat the word. So Rupa means the real Rupa, and the others are not so real Rupas. So these 18 are, say, more important actually, and when you practice meditation, these 18 can be seen during the practice of meditation, but the others are very difficult. So these 18, let's keep it in one group. So let us go through them again. The first 4, right? Element of earth, water, fire, air. And then 5 senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, sensitivity. Then 5 corresponding objects: sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. And then gender, femininity and masculinity. And then the base for other types of consciousness, heart base. And then to keep this body alive, life faculty. And to keep this body growing, nutrition. So these 18 are called the real Rupas. Now, if you look at the crosses to the right of these, how many crosses do you find? 9 crosses, right? Yeah. Now, what's the footnote says? These are inseparables. They cannot be, be is missing. They cannot be separated physically. That means these are 8, because there is tangibility also. So we do not count it as 1. So actually they are 8. So these 8 material properties are said to be inseparable. They cannot be separated in a lab or something, but we can separate them in our minds. That's why we say this is earth element, this is water element, and so on. But we cannot take earth element separately. Say we cannot say that this is earth element and then picking up another element. This is water element and this is fire element. We cannot separate them. So that is why they are called inseparables. So these inseparables are everywhere where there is material, where there are material properties. There are 8 material properties in the smallest particle of atom, according to the teachings of Abhidhamma. So they can divide the matter into very small particles, right, until they reach the atom. Now they said they can even divide the atom. So they can say that they can describe as the structure of an atom. So atom has a nucleus and then what do you call them? Proton, electron, and so on, and revolving around it. So according to Abhidhamma, we can say that even in what they call proton or electron, there are these 8 material properties, because these 8 cannot be separated physically. So there are actually 8, not 9. So what are the 8? 4 great elements, form or color, odor or smell, taste, and nutrition. So there is a kind of nutrition in every kind. Even in a rock or in a stone, there is nutrition. So these are called inseparables.
Sound is not an inseparable
No,
part.
no. Because sound is not always inherent in anything. Only when you strike something there is sound. So it is not always with the others. That's why it is excluded. So how many material properties are in this class? 8, right? Yeah. The 4 great elements, and then what? Form, odor, taste, nutrition, right? Then how many material properties are there now? 9. Plus sound, right? So sound is not always with say with glass. So only when you strike it there is sound. So it is not inseparable. So everywhere there are these 8 material properties, say, together. So any questions? And I think I will stop here, because I cannot go to the end of this in this one talk. So it will be ongoing, a kind of class, say a course for well-informed Buddhists or something like that. So we'll go to the end. So I don't know how many talks it will take, but please be patient, and I want you to memorize these. If you break them down in groups, then it's easier to memorize. Say the 4 great elements, and then the 5 senses, the 5 objects, and then the gender, and then the base for other consciousness. Next, life, and then nutrition. So these 18 can be memorized very easily. The only thing is, say you memorize it, you remember it again and again, so that you don't forget. Because it is easy to memorize at one sitting these 18, but later on you will forget. So you have to think of it from time to time.